any kind of adventure that ever comes up, if I'm invited, I go.
I'm expecting it to be more mentally tough than physically.
I'm looking forward to it, actually, sort of getting back to basics.
Within the first week, everyone's hands are going to be cut and bleeding and building calluses, and it's going to hurt.
I've always had a fantasy about sailing in tall ships.
We do want to try and sail this ship exactly as she would have been sailed, say, over 200 years ago. We want to try and measure ourselves against Captain Cook and his crew.
It's not a reality TV show because it's much more historically based. What we're doing is basically putting 21st century people into an 18th century situation.
I think there are about 6 of us on the whole crew that haven't really done any sailing before.
I know we're planning to do a 18th century sailor's diet.
Right, well, this is the space we're going to live in, about 50 of us, 6 weeks, living, eating and sleeping.
We're about to stretch our wings because now there's no more reefs. It'll be excellent sailing. This is what it's all about.
Mickey, do you know anything about fishing?
Not a thing.
I've got to keep my eyes on it. I've lost it now.
We write about these things, we read them, but we don't experience history. We don't really feel, smell it, taste it.
This is the story of a ship and a story of 2 adventures. One is happening now, the other more than 200 years ago. A secret voyage that altered the course of history and changed the face of the world. The Endeavour is into the 3rd week of its voyage. The crew has grown more confident in their sailing skills.
I need you to go to your lines for setting the fore course.
And more comfortable with their living conditions.
I'll pop the cabbage in at the very last second.
They've been tested by the shallows of the Great Barrier Reef.
Coming out of 215, true.
They are now about to be tested by the deep waters of the open ocean. Those on board are latter-day adventurers sailing a replica of the ship in which Captain Cook discovered the east coast of Australia in 1770. He had embarked on an extraordinary 3-year voyage of exploration that took him into the totally uncharted seas of the South Pacific. This voyage is following part of Cook's exact course in the Southern Oceans, trying to gain a deeper understanding of him, his crew, and what motivated them on their epic voyage into the unknown. The crew is made up of Brits, Americans, Australians, and New Zealanders, and includes professional sailors, scientists, medics, and historians. Chris is the cameraman, here to record the adventure and tell the story of this voyage across time. The last 3 weeks of sailing up the treacherous Great Barrier Reef of Australia have been tough. Sickness and injury have taken a toll. 2 of the historians have left the ship. First Ian with a bad back, and then Andrew collapsed with pneumonia. He was taken to a deserted island where he was picked up by a medevac helicopter.
Well, it seems like we're down to 3 historians. They're rapidly becoming their own subject matter. History. They're running out, falling over one after each other. I don't know what on earth's going on down there, unless there's some conspiracy and all knocking each other off to be the last historian left on the Endeavour.
Endeavour is now heading west across the Arafura and Timor seas to her destination, Jakarta. Right now, the ship is in the Torres Straits between Papua New Guinea and northern Queensland. In front of her, an epic 2,000-mile voyage across open sea. The navigators have been practicing the incredibly complex techniques of 18th century navigation. Now they're taking the reins of the ship.
This is serious business. This is not playing. And I have never navigated a boat of any sort before without a chart. I've navigated a lot of different ships, a lot of different boats, in a lot of different places on the world, but I've always had a much better idea of where I was and where I was going. This is very, very different.
Bye-bye Australia. on our way to Jakarta. 4 weeks of this. Much better than pulling up anchors.
We're about to stretch our wings because now there's no more reefs. It'll be excellent sailing. This is what it's all about. There's perfect wind, 20 knots, and we've got to get everything up, and there's just an open ocean in front of us. That's it, full of fish.
Everybody is looking forward to a constant supply of fresh fish, the bounty of open ocean sailing. Mickey is one of the first to get his line in the water.
All right, is yours away?
Yeah, mine's in.
And Cyril follows suit.
Using the same bait as Mickey, Cyril?
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you, I really have no idea what I'm doing. I just was helping Mickey untangle it. Don't know the first thing about fishing. But so far it's going very well.
You're probably the first one to catch that one.
Exactly, I'm waiting for the line to go ripping through my hand and have to scream for help. Fortunately, however, Al is here, who actually knows something about fishing. Mickey, do you know anything about fishing?
Not a thing.
Endeavour is now relying on the very limited and inaccurate maps that Captain Cook had at his disposal. Whether or not she reaches her destination is now very much up to the skill of the navigators.
So, guys, is this a bit of a challenge?
Is it a challenge? Yep. It's,
yes,
in some ways,
it's a challenge in more ways than one.
In some ways, I think it's probably more of a challenge. Let me not get this out of context. Cook was a pioneer. And I think in its way that Cook's trip, totally into the unknown, had a lot more to be admired about it and was a lot more difficult and a lot more bold than the Apollo program to put men on the moon. He had no communications with base. The Royal Navy would have loved to have supported him if they could, but once he left Plymouth, he was on his own, completely on his own, totally on his own resources. Whereas Armstrong, Aldrin, and the one everybody forgets, Collins, were in continual contact with Houston the whole time. They went where reconnaissance had already been carried out. Cook came out here absolutely blind. They didn't know what was here. Everybody knew what to expect on the moon, within reason. So the guys who went off in the Apollo program, yes, pretty damn brave and very impressive. Cook, he kept a crew and a ship and a scientific research program and an exploration program all humming, all working for 2 years. What a star.
The original Endeavour's sails were made of flax. The replica ship's sails are made from a synthetic material called Duradon, which has the look and feel of flax, but is lighter to handle and more resistant to rot. Endeavour now follows Cook's track into the wide, open ocean, powered by nothing more than variable tropical winds and the muscle of her crew. All sails are unfurled to catch any available wind. Suddenly, one of the fishing reels screams as something takes the bait.
You don't want to lose your line.
The line is pulled with such speed that whatever's on the other end must be enormous.
Tom, what is it?
It's a manta ray, which looks, you know, well, Trevor reckons 7 or 8 feet, but I don't know, it might even be bigger than that. It's absolutely huge. It looks like it's taken the line.
Not around that,
no, there's no way. I don't know what the breaking strain is on that, but they're better off just to cut the line and get rid of it.
The gigantic ray, oblivious to the fishing line it has snagged, returns to the ocean depths. In addition to reading the heavens, Cook would also try and work out his position by dead reckoning. That is, by keeping a meticulous record of his direction and speed. Cook measured speed using a technique known as streaming the log, something the navigators are going to attempt.
Dougal, do you want to come and watch them here? We've got this thing lashed down, all right?
We are throwing something out behind, a piece of wood, that's where the log name comes from, and letting it run out on a spindle The idea is it stays put in the water and we sail away from it, so that we count the number of knots in the string that run out in 28 seconds worth of sand. And the number of knots that run out in 28 seconds is our speed in knots, and that's where the word knots comes from.
Okay. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bingo.
There's one gone.
No, hang on, don't. Still quite a way to go.
No, that's right.
Give you a countdown as best I can with this sandblast.
Okay, all right, fine.
What fun. This is very blue, Peter. 3, 2, 1, stop. That wasn't bad.
Okay.
Right. Which way?
On the line. Beautiful. Yeah, we got to bring it around the side, I reckon.
I go straight up.
What's that, Al? It's a cobia. Good eating? Really good eating.
This is getting better and better.
I'm going to bring him over here. You can pull him right over the top.
It's gone. It's gone. It's got away. It got away?
Oh, no. Take the lure in.
Is that what he did? He bent the lure off?
No, he snapped the fucking... I could already...
Some of the volunteer crew fish.
That's huge.
Some sail and tend to other chores. And some are still learning the ropes.
I think I just did this completely wrong.
Come on, Mel. Eyes on you now. Foul mouth and all the men.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Melissa is receiving guidance in deck work from her mate from the Royal Navy.
Can you nip after and get one of the chickens to show Melissa how to put this on? I think that's termed in the naval circles as a bunch of bastards.
Is that right?
No. Come here, out of the way.
That's the way to get him to do it for you.
Yeah, what have you done?
I know how to do it. Oh, thanks, Mickey.
Is this you, the dumb American? The dumb blonde American? I can't do that. Gee, that's too hard.
That's exactly what I did with it.
No. You got it underneath. Well, you should be like that.
Okay, well, that's about a few feet.
It's got 2 knots on.
A few feet beyond the 2-knot mark. There's the 2-knot mark.
Which either means 2 knots or 4 knots.
Well, that was the conundrum that Duke said.
Look at that! She's picking on me! She's only human. She can't keep her hands off me. Bless her.
Oh, fish. Big fish.
Big one.
Oh, I've lost it.
That was seriously big.
That was huge.
That was about 3 feet long.
Look at the wave, look at the wave. The marlin. And he's not on, but he's there.
I think they're toying with you, mate.
Bastards.
Well,
what have we proved there, then?
we proved it works. We proved it works.
It works.
It works
up to a point.
It works up to a point, and we know how to use it. We don't know how to interpret these markings, but Dougal sews
That's
them on.
doable, though. We can look that up.
them on in a particular way.
We can look that up.
It doesn't seem to be the same way that we were expecting, quite. But I mean, that's life.
I think the other thing I get out of it is that it is quite clearly a craft which ordinary men had and presumably were taught by somebody.
Yes,
which we haven't got.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It makes such a lot of things about the journey. I mean, just this business of estimating speed. You can estimate speed in your own boat, can't you? Like I can estimate speed in the boats that I sail regularly.
I don't find it too difficult on board this boat.
Supper. Not the baked fresh fish that everyone's dreaming of, but the usual, salt pork and boiled vegetables. The same diet the crew's been eating for nearly 3 weeks.
The table, I just rushed over. Yeah, doesn't it?
Looks like the YMCA.
Yes, yesterday's man cooked again.
After supper and before sleep, one more try at catching fish.
Al's got me catching squid so we can catch bigger fish. We need something live at night because at night the fish don't see well, so they all hunt by smell. Need a nice, smelly, stinky squid. And then all the ones after that we can eat. We just need one for bait.
Yeah, I heard a big talk about all the fish we'd be catching.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, with a wheelbarrow.
He's no rushing these things. Oh, I'm wrapping my claw in.
No, nothing there. Empty as a hermit's address book.
The phrase 2-6 heave was first used on the British Navy's wooden ships as an order to fire the muzzle-loading cannons. Each member of the gun crew was allotted a number. Numbers 2 and 6 were responsible for hauling the gun into its firing position. As another day at sea begins, the navigators, as usual, monitor the progress of the sun through the sky. The sun is vital to telling the time. There are no modern clocks on board. Like Cook, the 21st century Endeavour calculates time by reference to the sun. When the sun is at its highest, it's midday, called ship's apparent time. Sand clocks measure the hours from this point. And bells are sounded every half hour. So 12:30 is 1 bell, 1 o'clock is 2 bells, and so on, until the end of the 4-hour watch, which is 8 bells. Then it starts all over again for the next watch. For Cook, this was as accurate as it got.
We're not used to working on the bell system. We're sort of getting people used to it, getting ourselves used to it, because people forget to turn the half-hour glass, and, you know, then the half-hour glass isn't quite accurate, and we expect it all to be pinpoint accurate nowadays, because we have a sort of fetish for horological accuracy. We expect to know the time to every second, whereas, of course, they didn't. They just worked on the basis of 3 bells, it's a bit after breakfast, you know, in the forenoon watch. They always knew what watch it was. You know, whether it's the forenoon watch or the afternoon watch or whatever. And you just got a vague idea of time. And a whole different concept of time and ways of living and ways of behaving than we have. And it's quite difficult to uninvent the 19th and 20th centuries, you know. We're just used to it. People say to me, what's the time? And I say, I don't know, it's somewhere between 3 and 4 bells. And they say, but what does that mean?
But time was also vital for telling Cook where he was on the Earth's surface. He didn't have satellite navigational systems, precise charts, or atomic clocks accurate to the millisecond. But what he did have were the heavens, themselves a sort of celestial chronometer. Establishing his latitude, where he was north or south of the equator, was straightforward enough. He just had to measure the angle of the sun with the horizon when the sun was at its highest point, in other words, at midday. But finding his longitude, where he was east or west, was much, much more complicated. To do this, he had to know the time of day where he was, easy enough by observing the sun. But then he had to compare it with the time back at base, that's in Greenwich, England. The difference between these times would translate directly into distance. For example, on the equator, a difference of 4 hours would represent a distance of some 4,200 miles. But without an accurate chronometer that could maintain Greenwich time at sea, watches were simply not accurate enough and pendulum clocks were useless on a rolling ocean. Cook used what's called the lunar distance method of navigation. This enabled him to establish the time at Greenwich from anywhere in the world and was a cutting-edge development that Cook and his young astronomer, Charles Green, pioneered. By this time in the 18th century, astronomers in Greenwich, England could work out exactly where the sun, the moon, the planets, and the stars would be at any time of the day or night, and the angles between them, from the point of view of planet Earth. These calculations, which could be made into the future, were published in a complex book of tables. All times, of course, were given according to Greenwich time. Cook and Green carried these tables on the Endeavour. So when they took their own measurements of the distance and angles between the moon and any other heavenly body, they could compare their findings against the predictions in the tables and thus establish the time in Greenwich. Because they knew their own time by reference to the sun, they could then calculate their own longitude from Greenwich. But the whole calculation involved some diabolical mathematics, and would take hours to work out.
We've got a little tiny new moon over here, brand new and shiny, and it's quite unobtrusive, and we're just at sunset, and we're waiting to see Mars, which should appear about at that angle, and we need three measurements. We need the altitude of the moon, we need the angular distance between the moon and Mars, and we need the altitude of Mars as well. And the trouble with this is that the horizon will become very unclear once the light is gone. You get a very blurry horizon, you can't get a good altitude. So even if you then get a good lunar distance between the moon and Mars, you can't actually make the equations come out. So it's all a bit delicate. We're standing here with lots of sextants and a torch and eyes fixed on the moon, hoping the boat doesn't swing around and obscure it, because what I hadn't realized about square riggers when we came on this trip was how many sails there are that get in the way. We need really a series of, if we can get it, 7 observations, so that we can graph them and see which ones look anomalous and which ones look accurate. And then, Mars still isn't out, and then start to take the best one and calculate it out, which will take 2 of us working side by side about 2 to 3 hours, I suppose. A midshipman was introduced to this method just before Captain Cook went on his voyage, and he said the observations are quite straightforward, which indeed they should be on a good night, but the calculations are very perplexed, he said, which is a lovely way of putting it. Is it there?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Point to aft the beam.
Okay.
With the help of last night's lunar distance readings, the navigators are trying to find the south coast of New Guinea as a landmark to Indonesia. Specifically, they're trying to locate False Cape. This is vital, because from there they will know to turn west and follow the ship's planned route. If they miss it, Endeavour will just keep heading north, right off course. And remember, the navigators, like Cook, have only distorted and inaccurate charts. Indeed, the latest position they've plotted, according to these charts, puts the ship half a mile inland on top of a mountain.
I think that is probably a fairly reasonable latitude and longitude, and so it demonstrates that Papua New Guinea isn't really there at all. But we know that it exists, and so the only possible explanation is that it must be further north. That's the only possible explanation. No, it's here. It's definitely in this area somewhere. We haven't gone north of it, so we're still south of it. Sure. I think we have to take a worst case assumption here and assume that we're rapidly approaching this false cape here. So we would like to turn north, or even east of north, find the coast, and then turn left again and follow the coast along.
And we must find it and know that we found it before we reach the Cape at the end here, because otherwise we're in, as you said before, in empty ocean for another 2 or 3 days. So, that's what we're doing. Actually, we better get this place clean, because it's cleaning stuff in a minute, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Tidy all our things away.
So, who's on watch now?
I am.
Right.
Whether on course or not, the ship has to be continually cleaned and maintained. Water barrels especially need regular scrubbing to guard against the formation of algae.
Does it smell nice in there?
What's that?
Does it smell nice in there?
Oh my God, it's disgusting.
No.
It's really messy in there.
Oh, it's not. It's relative. It's all relative.
Oh, there's some nice slime right there that I can get.
Yeah. The cook had someone to do this, especially on these voyages, I expect. No, we got you.
Don't move it!
I won't.
Here, you get Melissa to scrub your barrel? You know, if we were to turn this upright right now. You all right in there?
Thank you, my fellow American! This isn't very nice.
It would be even worse if we put this lid on.
Okay.
She's turning the barrel. It's Melissa's turn. Melissa's day in the barrel. Pull that peg out.
Get the peg out.
Wait, she's in upside down.
You can't be trusted at all.
Unlike the original Endeavour, the replica is equipped with modern communications, generators, and auxiliary engines. When needed, two 405 horsepower, 6-cylinder diesel engines can drive controllable pitch propellers that are 4 feet in diameter. With endeavor in the open ocean, the fish continued to bite. There's now a barracuda on the line big enough to feed the crew of nearly 50 for 2 days.
This is one we caught earlier. It's an old trout.
Yep. Quick grab it with both hands. Yeah.
The line is not strong enough to reel it in. This fish requires a whole different approach.
Give us one of these lines, quick. Untie one of these.
Got it. Hold on. I got a tail rope for you. Hang on.
Quick, man. I don't know the tail rope.
Tig, one of the permanent crew, is determined this one's not going to get away, despite its razor-sharp teeth.
Everybody, when this fish comes up, be careful because he'll shred you. Look at Tigger.
Watch your hands, Steve. Pull him up. Pull him up a bit more. A bit more, Mario. You need some more line out.
Back off, back your feet off. Tig, can I help you?
Where's that knife? Once you get out of the way, where's that knife?
Watch your feet, Mario.
That was wicked, man.
Jesus. Hold him like this. Take grab.
Man overboard!
Man overboard? Jesus Christ.
Go to your muster station! Muster station!
Suddenly, everyone forgets the fish. At the stern, one of the navigators, Moonbeam, is pointing out to sea.
Dom, right top of the main. Stay on the footing. Clear up.
There's 6. There's 6. There's 6.
Starboard side.
What's overboard, Dave?
Just the log. It just jerked up and out of here. No, not a man at all, but I've got to keep my eyes on it. I've lost it now. It's in that direction, though. Keep pointing to it all the time. I've lost it, Captain.
We lost the log overboard and we sent the rubber duck to go and try and find it. We've drifted quite a far down since then and it's not very easy to see, so now it's a little bit like looking for a needle in a haystack.
We have another log on board, and it would be good to recover this, but it's not the end of the world. Well, the next one, we'll have to actually have retaining clips on the basin that holds it to make absolutely certain that it can't jump. Furthermore, I think it's not really a 2-man job to do this, it's a 3-man job.
Certainly not a 1-man job.
You know, that's just a bitter lesson from experience, isn't it?
First the academics are trying to get off, now the equipment's trying to escape. We're going to get to Jakarta like the Marie Celeste. There'll be no bugger on board.
The bad news is the log line sank without a trace. The good news, the fish are now lining up to get on board. Mahi-mahi, Spanish mackerel, and
tuna.
Nice fish.
Bring him right back to the wave. There we go.
Woohoo!
Nice. 12 days of salt beef, fresh tuna. Capers.
I thought tuna comes in tins.
In brine or with...
Yeah, tomato sauce you want it.
It's getting a bit bloodlusty around here.
Look at the beating.
I don't think either of them go in that category.
Apparently, Al makes a sport of eating the heart. So I was anxious to try something new.
A lot of goodness in the heart.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It hurt. But you can still feel it going like this as it goes down. Good, 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 good.
Jumping off your tongue.
For Cook, it was probably about the same as it is for us, which is the fishing and the collecting of new food just gets everybody really excited. It does wonders for morale. I mean, the whole quarterdeck is buzzing as soon as a fish comes up for half a day. You just got a big smile on your face. Look what I just got. I just pulled this out of the ocean. I just got it way out of touch with the civilized grocery shopping nature of man and got in touch with the wild, hunter-gatherer that I think I am.
Wow. I think we're going to have a nice tea. Well, we're going to cook the fresh fish that was caught this morning. A little bit of garlic, a bit of salt and peppers on there, and we're going to put it into the oven now and see what happens. So you have to keep the fire banked up and right up against the oven to keep it hot, nice and bright. A lot of heat there.
Well, this will go down well with the troops.
Oh yes, the change from salt beef. I'll be popular today.
The order is given to swing the lead, that is, heave a weighted rope into the sea to measure the depth. Currently 13 fathoms, or 78 feet. John, the navigator, wants to see whether the water's getting shallower, a possible sign that the ship's nearing land. Nearing New Guinea.
Why the sudden panic about depth? Because
we're getting close.
Well, we're not that close if it's 26, if it's 13 fathoms.
We don't know, do we?
No, we don't know.
There's a change in the wave pattern.
Yeah.
We're getting reflected swell off the shore from somewhere.
And it's a lighter coloured sea.
So I reckon the visibility is about 7 or 8 miles. The captain reckons it's less.
Yeah, I reckon we're near land. Where are those clouds?
That's it?
I reckon we're near land. Well, we must be near land just for those clouds. Those clouds only really form over land.
Lead away.
8 fathoms! When you consider that we're sweating blood to sound in 8 fathoms, and Cook used to use a 200-fathom line, he doesn't say how many people he put on it, but I hope he had a bit of a gang, because this is quite hard work.
The water is getting shallower. There's a ribbon of cloud on the horizon, and the color of the sea is changing from blue to green. All are indications that land is near.
Hold on tight, John.
Of course.
John is convinced that the crew will soon be seeing New Guinea.
I believe it's in sight that way, over to starboard. It looks as though it might be visible. So I'm going to step out on the yard here and hook on. So I can get a good look around the corner. Yes, there's definitely a brown smudge running from just forward of the starboard beam back to just aft of the starboard beam. That's it. And then it disappears again. So that's the cape we're looking for. False Cape. But I have absolutely no doubt that's what it is. And this is something I have always wanted to do. Do you want to stick your fingers in your ears for a moment? Yep. Deck there! Land ho! And it's genuine too. The navigation worked. We found it. And it's a great relief, I must say. Great pleasure. I wish my wife were here with me to see it, but I don't think she'd enjoy it up here. But I wish my grandson were here with me to see it. He'd love it.
The original Endeavour lasted 29 years. Records show that it became a transport ship called the Lord of Sandwich, and later became a frigate for the British in the American Battle for Independence.
And
like that.
Love
it, love it. Saw it come on board. It looks good, it smells good. I know it's going to taste good.
So You notice how quiet it is?
Yeah.
It's a sure sign.
They're just eating.
They're just eating, yeah.
How's it taste, Sam?
How you think?
We just got to break in here now, then we'll get the two favourite parts, the fish eyes and the brains. There we go.
I think I'll stick to the veggies.
This is the gem.
Everyone is happy with fresh fish for dinner. But is it good enough for Mickey to trade his life in the Royal Navy for the life of an 18th century sailor?
No. Absolutely no way, no how. No, I like my creature comforts too much.
Do you like the sense of adventure?
Oh yeah, the sense of adventure, yeah, blooming iron. But it's nice when you can do it on a warship with the instant power, instant hot water, nice food, usually. No, I don't think I would have liked to be an 18th century sailor whatsoever. Spent all your life at sea, literally. Was it Cook's first trip was 3 years or something like that? No, not for me.
Life is good aboard Endeavour. Far away from the 21st century, the crew is discovering something about history and something about itself. The navigation is working. The fish are biting. And it's now September, the beginning of summer in the southern hemisphere.
Sorry to wake you up so alarmingly. You are actually probably sitting on the most safest place in the world right now. What I'm going to tell you now is going to shock all of you. This morning, American time, 8:30, the 737 was flown into one of the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center in New York. It was full of passengers. It was hijacked. It was an internal flight. 20 minutes later, another airplane flew into the other Twin Tower. That one was hijacked as well. About 2 hours later, an airplane flew into the Pentagon, full of passengers, another hijacked. And a fourth airplane was crashed in Pittsburgh, with undisclosed number of people dead. Shortly after the one in New York, the Twin Towers collapsed. Here, believe it or not, we are safe. Obviously, the Americans, first of all, would like to contact their people in America and talk to them, and reassure them. And then anybody else who wishes to talk to anybody, if you have any relations or friends in America, and if you want to talk to them, then you can use a satellite telephone, which is down in the great cabin. Other than that, we'll continue with our normal routine and keep on trucking, because there's nothing we can do.
It was just awful. I mean, awful. And I just lost it, you know, right there, just like everyone else. Shock, disbelief, it can't be, you're lying, you know, not true. And then, you know, you think about your friends. I have friends in New York. My parents live in New Jersey. My house is not far from the Pentagon. So then you think, oh my God, you know, what if something happened to somebody? And it was just like the rest of the country and the rest of the world, just shock and utter disbelief.
But it was particularly surreal because we're at sea surrounded by blue water and there's no worries in the world, and here's this weird piece of news, this unbelievable piece of news. I mean, everybody felt the same way. How? This doesn't happen. This is a movie. You know, this doesn't happen.
It was so bizarre to me that initially, for that split second when he told us what had happened, I'm not sure I accepted it. It was something like from a science fiction novel. And I didn't know if they were trying to put us under stress to see how we would react, if this was some mean, terrible joke. But once you saw the look in his eye, you knew it was true. And it was just devastating.
And what made it worse was we had no radio, we had no TV, we had no internet, and we were imagining it to be much worse than it actually ended up being. You know, when we had heard the Twin Towers fell, we were talking and we were like 50,000 people dead. I was imagining like all of Lower Manhattan gone, mayhem, you know, mass chaos everywhere. Excuse me. So that made it almost even worse because your imagination was let free to run wild.
Only one thing is certain. Everyone on board will return to a different world than the one they left behind.
I feel helpless. I feel I don't know, I mean, I feel remote from it, but not removed from it. I feel like if I were at home, at least I would be at home. You know, I'm trapped on a small boat with a bunch of strangers for all intents and purposes, and you know, in a time of need, one likes to be around loved ones and you know, at least be on familiar ground.
I almost wish that we couldn't get any news at all here. I almost wish that we never got it and got it in Indonesia, because this is almost worse than if we could get nothing at all. But it's such a terrible thing that happened that it just builds on itself as we're sitting around, and it's worse than if we actually had the news.
I mean, I work in an environment of 24-hour news coverage, information being key and prominent in our lives. Cook's original crew, they were at sea 3 years at a time, and think about the significant changes that went on while they were gone. That's unimaginable. Unimaginable.
You asked me a question 2 days ago whether I'd like being an 18th century sailor, and I said no. I think I kind of like to be one now.